welcome to all of you to today's special talk in English by Swami Tattwamayananda Ji Maharaj, who has come all the way from Vedanta Center of Northern California, San Francisco, USA. Maharaj has a special, and it is BA course in Rimse, perhaps in the year 87, 88 or 86, 87. So we used to meet, we used to spend a lot of time. Maharaj has a special grounding in the study of Sanskrit and Vedanta right from early days. He is well versed in our scriptures, especially the Shankara Bhashya of the Prasthanatraya. He was editor, is the writer and the speaker. He was editor of Prabhupada Kerala, our magazine in Malayalam. For many years he was Acharya in the training center and taught the scriptures to the brahmacharis for residential of 3 days. At that time, Maharaj spoke on Mundaka. So we are very, very happy to have him here, and we profusely thank him for agreeing to be with us this evening. He wants to go to Bangalore, actually. Then we requested him, if you can first come to Mysore, that will be Sunday. So evening we can hold in this talk, and then afterwards we can go to Bangalore. So then we agreed, and
ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। My namaskar and thanks to Swami Muktidananda Ji Maharaj for that most generous introduction, and my namaskar to all the devotees, all other revered Swamijis who are present here. And it's always a matter of privilege, joy, and it's a kind of inner fulfillment for me as a student in the Rimse, where I had the privilege to spend 1 year. And I was just talking about our close association with a very senior and revered Swamiji who stayed there, Swami Achalananda Ji Maharaj. So thank you everyone for giving me this chance and opportunity to talk to you on this very interesting subject. So the topic before us is service as a kind of sadhana for spiritual fulfillment. In fact, this idea originally comes from Swami Vivekananda, though as a concept it goes back all the way to the Bhagavad Gita itself. Atmano mokshartham jagat hitaya cha. To begin with, how does service, means we are working in a factory, in a university, in a hospital, or for the ordinary housewives in their day-to-day activities, how does a little bit of unselfish act of service become a tool for spiritual fulfillment? That's a subject. Now, most of you, or most of us, may have encountered some moments in our life when our mind is not our friend. To give an example, suppose you read in a book or you listen to a lecture and you are told that if you do half an hour exercise every day in the morning, it can help in improving your health, mental health, physical health, and so on. Or rather, if somebody tells you if you meditate, let's say 10 minutes every day in the morning, it will be very helpful. And you take a strong decision, but tomorrow, when the time comes, your mind tells you, no, I will rather begin my meditation tomorrow. Today, maybe I have something else to do. I won't do exercise today. Tomorrow onwards, I will start. And this tomorrow continues. Why did this happen? Because our mind is not our friend. This frequently happens. A conflict between what we want to do and what our mind allows us to do. If our mind can permit us to do whatever we want, there would be absolutely no problem in the world. 99% of the population want to have peace of mind, want to live a happy life, want to do good things, great things. There is no doubt about it, at least a vast majority. But when they try to do, they are not able to do very often. Very often they are able to do. You give it a piece of stone to eat, it will bite you. Suppose you give your dog some healthy, good food, it will come after you. Now, if we can feed our mind with healthy food, then our mind will become our friend. If we feed our mind with unhealthy food, it bites you, it turns against you. How do we feed our mind with healthy food? By doing good things. There's no other way. At the physical level, we have more freedom, more autonomy. See, suppose tomorrow, relatively speaking, suppose this moment you want to turn to the right or left when you drive, do some physical activities, slowly you find some good activities, some service, you find our mind slowly becomes a friend because we are giving good food to our mind. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Sadhana Pada, Tapaswadhyaya Ishara Pranidhananani Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga is defined as Tapa, Swadhyaya and Ishara Pranidhana. In this context, Vachaspadi, Vijnana Bhikshu and some other commentators, they say the best form of Tapa is to do some good physical activity. If we cannot meditate, we try to read a good book. If we cannot read a good book, go to the nearby Vedanta society or any Ashrama, any holy place and clean the floor. You can help in the gardening. These kinds of physical activities will generate spiritual energy. Remember, good activities, Shreshtathamam karma. So, yajna is defined as Shreshtathamam karma. Yajna means a sacred activity, something that you do with a sense of sanctity and sacredness. Maybe bringing up children, teaching in a university, doing farming, or maybe helping the ashrama in puja activities, or maybe taking care of your own children, your own parents, your own grandparents. All these can become a spiritual activity. So, it's very important that one should join the kindergarten. As I mentioned, activities that you do with total unselfishness have produced spiritual energy. And the spiritual energy helps you to evolve, to move forward in the evolution of spiritual life. Slowly you find when you try to meditate, your mind cooperates with you. It's not hostile any longer. This is an important thing. How do we test whether our mind is friendly or not? When we try to do something which is essentially good for us, our mind helps us, our mind smiles at us, our mind cooperates with us. That's why you find spiritually advanced souls feel a great joy in mind. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, if you read the 6th chapter, this is a question that most of us may ask in our life. Suppose you meditate for a long time, you do a lot of worship, you go on a pilgrimage for many, many years, many times, and still you feel you have not achieved your goal. That's what Arjuna felt. So that's why ayati saddhayopeta. Saddhayopetaha ayatihi. He has a lot of earnestness, sincerity, but at the same time, he had not reached the goal. This is straight. And in answer to this, Lord Krishna says, Parthanaiveha namutra vinasastasya vidyade nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tadagachati. Whatever little spiritual practice you do, that will ensure your spiritual progress. So any little activity is like putting some money in the bank. And when we are reborn again, what happens is we are born with a checkbook and a fountain pen and a bank balance. Bank balance of good karmas, good vasanas, good samskaras. So Lord Krishna says, Purvabhyasena tenaiva hriyadepi abashopi sakha jijñāsurabhayogasya shabda brahmadi vartate. So when we try to meditate, when we try to do some good activity, if we have already done something in the past, on the strength of that past activities, helplessly we'll be prompted to do good things, we'll be prompted to go forward in our spiritual evolution. Krishna says again, Tatratam buddhi samyogam labhade paurodekikam yatadecha tato bhuyasam siddhu kurunandana. What I mean to say, the point is, any little service activity. You may not get enough time, some of our among the same group of devotees for decades. Naturally, in India, we have a huge pool of devotees. But in foreign countries, especially the West, we have a smaller number. Still we find many of these devotees come to the center, they do the cooking on special occasions, they clean the floor, and they disinfect the places, especially during COVID times. They do all this, and many of them have grandchildren to take care of, many of them have children to take care of, many of them have their own jobs. Still they drive 40 miles and they do all this. They are not crazy. You know the reason. When they come to Vedanta Society or Ramakrishna Mission in India's context, and when they did some work in flowers, some service activities for a noble cause, what is happening is Sri Ramakrishna is putting something in their pocket. Not, he will give a check. What's a check? You feel, when you do something noble, you feel a strange feeling of inner fulfillment. That's the sign that our mind is slowly becoming our friend. Any noble activity, even if you help a person to cross the street, or if you send a check for helping people suffering from natural calamities somewhere in some distant countries, when you do that, after that work is over, we feel a kind of inner fulfillment. It's called kridarthada and kridagrityada. These two words are used in Sanskrit. The idea, well, I have achieved something that I should have achieved, kridarthada. Kridagrityada means I have done something that I should have done. This feeling is very helpful in our vidiyade. Samadosha samaknisa samadhatu malakriya. Prasanna atmendriya manaha sustha. Who is a healthy minded person? A person whose mind is prasanna atmendriya manaha. Prasanna means a feeling of serenity, inner fulfillment, inner contentment. A kind of effortless feeling of inner serenity and contentment. When that happens, you find your BP comes down, your mind remains calm and quiet. In fact, this is a very precious thing. We should not underestimate this. If you go to Western countries, you find people who have piled up billions of dollars, captains of industry, who are wanting kind of inner fulfillment. Mind is not prasanna. Prasanna means, in Sanskrit, prasanna means a state of prasannada, a state of effortless, spontaneous, inner contentment. Santosha it is called. Samyak tushta iti santosha. So that kind of inner fulfillment. For that, we should do some good activities. If you want to meditate, let's say for 4 hours a day, mind may not cooperate. If you want to read scriptures, mind may not cooperate. Suppose we go to a library. There are wonderful books in the library. Great spiritual books. There are also some rotten books. If our mind is good ideas by reading good books, by listening to good words, by thinking good thoughts, that mind slowly becomes our best friend. When our own mind becomes our best friend, that's the healthiest, most contented way of life. For that, the basic tool is doing something good for others, not only for ourselves. That's why it is stated here, we should turn our mind into our best friend. When our mind is our best friend, then it will help us. It will congratulate us when we do something good. When our mind is not our best friend, it will create problems when we try to do something good that is actually good for us. So, anyway, so I'm coming to the subject. I mentioned this chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, in one context, Arjuna asked this question, Ayadi Saddhayo Pedo Yoga Chalida Manasaka Aprapa Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Katim Krishna Gechati. These ideas come in the Gita. So, what happens to a person who is not self-controlled, ayatihi, but a lot of saddha? He wants to do a lot of great things, but his mind is not friendly. You want to read great books, but mind doesn't allow you to read great books. You want to do good things, mind doesn't permit us. So what one should do under such circumstances? So Lord Krishna says, Partha naiveha namutra vinasastasya vidide nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgadim tada gechati. A person who actually tries to do something good, that person will never fail to attain the highest spiritual food. So any single unselfish activity is the right. If we can deliberately, forcibly do something good at the physical level, because the mental level we don't have much freedom. Mind will not permit us to do certain things, to think the right thoughts. But physically we can do a lot of great things. So continued practice of physical karma yoga will slowly produce enough mental, spiritual food, and slowly you find our own mind becomes our best friend. So this is one important thing. Another aspect of this particular subject in front of us is this. How do we slowly befriend our own mind? Again, the related subject. How we can turn our own mind into our best friend? This is a simple question. We want to think good thoughts, but mind will not permit us to do. We are not able to do what we sincerely want to do. So that's because our mind has accumulated a lot of samskaras, which will not permit us to turn our mind into as good things. At the mental level, we have less autonomy. At the physical level, we have more autonomy. So Gita says, if we continuously do some good activities, these good activities will generate spiritual energy. The spiritual energy will help us to befriend our mind and turn our mind into our own best friend. This is a very important thing to remember. How to befriend our mind? The easiest way to befriend our mind is to turn our mind towards good physical activities. If we cannot meditate, we can do karma yoga at the physical level. If we cannot do japa, then also we can do some physical activities. Because physical make our mind friendly towards ourselves, proper karma yoga. Now, coming back to the earlier subject that we discussed earlier, I already mentioned this in the Bhagavad Gita. How to turn our mind into our best friend. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there is an important discussion here, in the 4th chapter. At the physical level, we have more freedom. At the mental level, we have less freedom. So, how to generate spiritual food? By physical activities. If we can generate a lot of spiritual energy through physical activities, very often, this conflict is there. We want to do great things, but mind will not cooperate. Because the mind has not accumulated enough spiritual way to befriend our mind and turn our mind into its best friend is to go on doing good things. Good physical activities will generate spiritual energy, and that spiritual energy will turn a hostile mind into our best friend. This is an important contribution of yoga psychology, really speaking. In the yoga psychology, it's very clearly stated. If you go on doing good physical activities, those good physical activities will generate spiritual energy. And that spiritual energy will slowly influence the mind, and mind slowly becomes our best friend. Mind will congratulate us when we try to do something very good. For normal spiritual seekers, this is a meditate, but mind will not look. But mind suddenly turns away from that. Rather, mind turns towards something which is more sensational, which is perhaps more eye-catching. Under such circumstances, what we should do is reading a book, do something at the physical level, because physical activities, good physical activity will generate spiritual energy, and accumulated spiritual energy will turn a hostile mind into a friendly mind. This is a very, very important idea that you find in the Gita and in the Upanishads. Coming back to Yoga Sutra, there is an interesting discussion in the 4th chapter, and elsewhere you find very often we want to do great things, but mind will not permit. There are many people who face this problem. We want to read a good book. We want to think good thoughts. But a friendly mind, such a mind will cooperate with us in our spiritual life. This is a very important principle that you find in the Yoga Sutras and in the Bhagavad Gita. Swamiji, may I ask you one question? I would rather spend some time through question answer. What do you say? I think that's what I do. And then quickly, because I found we frequently question answer be very, very helpful. Okay, so that's okay. So that's a very interesting. So last 20 minutes we will have questions, because I don't know in what way I'm communicating with you. Coming back to the human conditions here. Arjuna is asking, Ayadi Shraddhayo Vedo Yoga Chalidamanasa Aprapi Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gadim Krishna Gechadi. Arjuna is asking a question. What happens to a person who is Ayati, but a lot of Shraddha? What happens to such a person who is engaged in spiritual life? And Krishna's answers, Ayadi Shraddhayo Vedo Yoga Chalidamanasa Aprapi Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gadim Krishna Gechadi. Parthanaiveha namutra vinasas tasya vidyade nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgadim tada gacchati. A person who goes on doing good things, kalyana krit, such a person will never have to face any problem. Now, in spiritual life, every action produces a residual effort, positive effort. If you and that spiritual energy will turn a hostile mind into a friendly mind. This is an important point in Gita. So that's why Arjuna was facing this predicament. Arjuna was in the battlefield. He wanted to do his duty, but when a situation arose, he found himself in a helpless condition. So, in answer to this, Lord Krishna continues his advices. So in the 2nd chapter, first he says, Lord Krishna says, Krishna scolds him to begin Klaibim, Masam, Partha, etc. Then he gives a definition, he clear path. He says a person who is practicing karma yoga, yogastha kuru karmani sangam tektva dhananjaya siddha siddho samabhuta samattam yoga uchyade buddhi yukto jaghatiha ube sukradushkade tasma yoga yujyasva yoga karmasu kausalam. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tektva dhananjaya siddha siddho samabhuta remain mentally steady and strong. At the same time, he will be able to achieve progress in spiritual life and also in material life. And the same Arjuna, towards the end, he says, he became fully satisfied, he became fully contented, and eventually he became aware of his duty as a Kshatriya, as a soldier. Now, if you come to the Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel also, you find many interesting predicaments. A man like Yam, who was practically very highly successful person, but in his domestic life, chronicler of Sri Ramakrishna's message and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Now the same Yam himself later on considers Sri Ramakrishna as an incarnation, and Sri Ramakrishna turns him into his chronicler, his messenger. Through Yam, his teachings came well known to all over the world. In Sri Ramakrishna's life also, you find this unique example. Sri Ramakrishna, on the one hand, he was the synthesizer of all the four yogas. At the same time, he interpreted our ancient spiritual message for modern world. And in Swami Vivekananda, you find a modern exponent of Sri Ramakrishna's message, who interpreted and expounded Sri Ramakrishna's message. You find this great synthesis of the best of the traditional and best of the modern, the ancient Vedic message, spiritual culture of Vedic times were interpreted and practiced by Sri Ramakrishna for the benefit of our own times. So this is a very important aspect we have to remember. Now I would like to invite questions, because that will be better. That's what we do. Any question you can ask. Yeah.
That's okay if one person wants to become good, even if his mind is not cooperating due to the matters of being physically. But a person who doesn't want to do, but somebody else in his or her family wanted them to turn to spiritual life, how can we help?
Yeah, in family. At physical level, we have more freedom. What thought comes to our mind is not in our hands. But in which direction I walk is more or less in our hands. So those who don't have the mental willingness to do good things, they can physically go on doing good things. For example, if you cannot meditate, no problem. If you go on cleaning the puja room, doing some service to a temple or a spiritual place, after some time you find your mind slowly accumulates samskaras. These healthy samskaras will slowly turn your mind more and more friendly towards meditation. So because our mind doesn't cooperate when we try to meditate, because spiritual practices will reduce, slowly one will find meditation easier and easier. That's why many beginners in spiritual life, when they try to meditate, mind revolves. Mind is not ready for it. Mind doesn't have enough stock of spiritual samskaras. And how do we accumulate samskaras? By physical activity. Not only physical activity, mental activity, reading scriptures, japa also will help. But physical activity is easier. When you want to read a book, your mind doesn't cooperate. Mind goes to a thriller. But you can go and clean a temple. There is less resistance at a physical level. And which is more sophisticated by accumulating good samskaras, either by reading books, listening to teachers, or physical activities. But that's a magic of physical service activity. If anybody in Mysore and anywhere else finds it difficult to meditate, anywhere, any of you, it's only because mind is not ready to meditate. Mind suddenly revolves when you try to meditate. Suppose you go on doing some activity, coming here, collecting flowers. Somehow, some kind of association with a holy place will progress in spiritual life. It's a simple fact. Service activity with physical service activities, which is easier. Remember, intellectual and physical. Intellectual service activities may be more difficult, or because you have to think and act. But physically cleaning this place, this literally happens. I gave you the example in San Francisco. Some people, they don't understand what is this seva, tyaga and all that. But when they automatically come, Americans are more prone to physical activity, very efficient in that aspect. So they go on working for a long time. Slowly you find they start reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. At the beginning, they cannot read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. They will throw away the book. They will rather read a thriller. Learn association with a holy place, watching the pujas, and being participants. By participating in spiritual activities, mind accumulates spiritual assets. Such a mind is ready for higher types of spiritual disciplines, like meditation, etc. The only reason why our mind is not cooperating with us when we try to meditate is mind doesn't have enough stock of spiritual assets. A person who cannot meditate, next day onwards, he can participate in some physical service activities. Physical. Because your mind may be disturbed. Still, if you clean the puja room, it will become clean. Physical activity is simple. Your mind may be revolting, unsteady, may be angry. Still, if you take a broom and clean the puja room, it becomes clean. So, that physical activity, if continued, will generate spiritual asset. That spiritual asset, samskara chakram. Karma produces samskara. Samskara produces vasana. Vasana leads to sankalpa. Sankalpa leads to similar activity. This goes on rotating. That's the magic of service activity. The service activity is like a local bus. Anyone can get into it. Once you get into it, you are bound to reach the goal. So people who continuously participate in service activities, we slowly develop the ability to meditate, to concentrate, to read scriptures. This is very, very important. That way, look at Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna did not recommend the same spiritual discipline for everyone. Vivekananda was okay, meditation, Advaita, all that. You can imagine. I don't know how to go to the story, all of you familiar. But what about the common people? Sri Ramakrishna gave them do some work. Everyone cannot meditate. In fact, most of the time Sri Ramakrishna advises his disciples and devotees to pray, not to meditate energy. Even if a person cleans the puja room, comes to the ashrama, do some work, it could be in the way of paying donation for a higher cause, participating in some of the activities taken up by the ashrama. Actually, indirectly, you are participating in what is called yajna. Yajna vai sreshtatamam karma. Yajna is sreshtatamam. Why not sreshtatharam? Because yajnathar karmanah anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaga. Dhartham karma gundeya mukta sangha samachara. Any kind of activity which is not done as yajna is loka bandhana, becomes a cause of bondage. On the other hand, an activity done slowly, you may go to the university, you may go to Oxford, Harvard, any other university at some point of time in distant future. But if you do well in the kindergarten today, then maybe after some years, you will end up in Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard. It may be you may reach Advaita Anubhuti, that is a Harvard in spiritual life, if you start participating in some kind of activity in the ashrama next door to you. That's the magic of service activity. So service is the only sadhana that could be called a local bus, primary school. Anyone can board that bus and you are sure to reach the goal. Because as I mentioned, service were in charge of, I used to go for lectures every year. In Vivekananda Kendra, you find something very interesting. Many of the Vivekananda Kendra life workers who work for long years, dedicated service, total dedication for spreading Swamiji's message, going to the northeast, teaching in schools, facing very difficult situations. Eventually, they developed qualities like renunciation. Many of them became monks. Why this happened? Maybe when they were young, didn't want to become monks, but continued. I don't say you should be a monk to do unselfish, not at all. If you look at the Upanishadic, Vedic literature, you find many of the great teachers, Uddalaka was an householder, Swetaketu was. You find many of the great teachers were retired house. Anything, the humblest bit of physical activity, verbal activity, good words that you speak, good thoughts you think, all these will potentially produce spiritual energy. This spiritual energy will push you forward in your spiritual life. And eventually you find tensions, depressions, all these slowly come down. This can be physically demonstrated. Now, people who suffer, let's say, suffer from various domestic problems, I have come across a few cases in the United States. You know, many Indians try to imitate Americans. They want to pretend to be the nephews of George Washington. They don't often imitate the good points and so on. But slowly, when they become participants in the activities of Vedanta societies, either by coming every week for listening to lectures or any cleaning activity, slowly they find their own domestic problems get resolved by an unknown power. That's why, Ananya Chindayandoma Yejana Pardivasle, Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamekam. This is interesting thing. If you go on doing some service activity with total dedication for a higher cause, you find your own problems are mysteriously resolved by an unknown power. This is not just a belief, it's a physically verifiable fact. You can find this. So that's the magic of service activity. And the importance of service activities, especially clean the pavement, clean the temples, they do. And slowly you find after some years, they become calm and quiet without the help of psychiatrists or taking medicines. Because good activities have the magic effect of purifying, transforming, refining our emotions and feelings. After all, how emotions are built up from a psychological point of view. You do something. Your activity has got two dimensions. One is visible and tangible, demonstrable. The other one is not tangible, not visible. You do something, let's say you pay 100 rupees to a person to help a person, and you are happy because you have done something that you ought to have done. Now, it has an effect in your own mental system. You feel a strange feeling of inner fulfillment. The inner fulfillment actually brings down BP. It helps people suffering from diabetes, depression. It's a physically demonstrable fact. So what happens is, those who do something for a higher cause, their own problems are being taken over and resolved by a higher power. Tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyakam. It is not just a matter of religion or spirituality, faith. It's a physically, scientifically verifiable fact. If a person goes on doing good work for a higher cause, for an unselfish cause, that person is bound to. Is there anything other interactions? Most welcome. Yeah.
If we take a typical week, there are only out of
of which is not mandatory, for which you are not paid, which you do voluntarily. This voluntary activity has the magic of taking you on its wings to a higher experience of inner fulfillment. Mandatory or formal responsibilities and duties, however well you perform, may not give you a kind of inner blessedness, inner bliss, but something that you do without expecting any reward, as a higher reward that fills your heart, and that gives you a kind of inner bliss which can be even physically, scientifically demonstrated. It will have a healing effect on our mental system. Feelings, kind of inner joy, inner content, garland of flowers, which you... so that's a very important thing to do. So slowly you'll find even duties can be done as a service activity. So at the beginning, 10 hours you do office work, 1 hour you do a service activity. When you do service activities in the ashrama, you feel an inner blessedness. As you progress in spiritual life, even 10 hours of a duty in your office will be like doing service in the temple. The same joy, the same contentment, santosha. It's a very, santosha is a very, we feel a difference between spiritual activity and secular duties and responsibilities. Slowly you find even secular duties and responsibilities could be done as a spiritual activity. That's how we progress in evolving in spiritual life. Thank you. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Inside my mind, it's always a war.
Mind?
Inside my mind, it's always a war. When I'm engaged spiritually, of course, I generate a lot of good thoughts. But when I'm off the duty, like off the spiritual duty, then bad thoughts, they come unannounced. So how do I be free from those bad thoughts?
Spiritual and non-spiritual. But slowly as we move forward, even the so-called secular non-spiritual activities can be done as spiritual activity. So the line of demarcation slowly disappears in direct proportion to progress in spiritual life. As this happens, even the most difficult secular duties and responsibilities will become a matter of joy, can be done with a sense of total dedication. That's called karma yoga in its highest level of fulfillment. That's why Arjuna was a fighter, not a very pleasant duty. But Krishna asked him to do that as a karma yoga. It's an important thing to do. So, as we progress forward, move forward, you find even the most so-called secular or non-spiritual activity becomes as simple, as pleasant as doing puja. But it is bound to happen, only it's a slow progress. Thank you for the question. Swamiji, I think I have taken enough time. I am free, but we had enough time. Okay, thank you.